Hey, this is part six in the never-ending story of the power of the legislative branch. It's the end, so it's not true. It's the end of it. Um, Doing this right before I do my first live Google Meet. See how it goes. And I intend to do one of those at least a week. If you have questions, comments, just stop in and say hi. That's okay too. Concerns with anything that's going on with remote learning. Um, if I can help, we have meetings on Friday with the eighth grade team, so I can bring things up for you. Yeah, it's low key. Anyway, so let's get started. Let's get this done. And Let me start with again, the website. Don't be afraid to come to the website if you're starting to get confused, like which assignment is due when and all that stuff. It's just like we used to do, but I put it in remote learning and it's in order and it says when I assigned it, when it's due. So if the Google Classroom stuff is confusing you or you're not getting notifications or whatever, I don't know what it looks like on your end. I don't. So I can help only to a degree. All right, so let's look at this. We'll go to present. I'm starting here just because this next assignment is going to talk a lot about this and you being able to, there's going to be a matching. I broke it up into the House and the Senate and what's going on in my beautiful pictures. And again, the artwork is probably worth money if you printed it out. So, and I haven't copyrighted it, so you could print it out, put it all over your house if you wanted to, frame it. Anyway, so yeah. So where we left off in part 5, the exciting, we were in the Senate, and it went to the idea that the Senate committee had gotten the bill, and it had already gone through the committee in the House. So I was trying to explain to you that they don't have to do research, they don't have to do more hearings if they don't want to, and they usually don't. They just read through the stuff from the House committee. Unless they're starting the bill, then they do the work, and the House committee would do the same. So that's what I'm trying to show in this picture. It's that hearing room, but it's empty. It looks like a bunch of guys trying to play giant horseshoes, but that's not really what it is. It's they're sitting there. You try to draw stick figures sitting. Really try it. It's not easy. All right. So if the committee says, "Yeah, we like the bill. We think it should become a law." It's the buses stop at the railroad tracks, open the door, and before they go. Then it comes out and it goes on to this thing. And I did the whole Ickey Woods thing, and I know it's kind of stupid, but you don't probably even know who Ickey Woods is anymore because it's a long time ago. But he used to do he used to do the Ickey Shuffle whenever he did something good in the football field, and it was fun. And it became something, and all the kids were doing it and stuff back in the day. And he was getting excited because his number was called. And that's kind of like what it is. It's called Order of Bills in the Senate. It's basically a to-do list. As the bills come out of the committee, they're added onto a list, and they just have to wait. And the reason that exists is because you never know when the Senate will be able to take it. You can't put it on the calendar like they do in the House because the House limits time of debate and then limits the amount of time for voting, and then it's on to the next bill. So they know they can schedule it. You can't schedule it in the Senate because there's no time limit. So it just goes nuts. And unless it's an important bill and they vote to have it cut the line, like Hannaford's does when I come in, which is not true, but it's funny. And, I'm watching one of the ways I cope is I've been DVRing Seth Meyers and Late Night and Stephen Colbert. It's fun to watch them. They tell incredible jokes that would bring incredible laughter, and they're in their houses, so there's no one laughing. And I imagine that that's what's happening here. There's incredible laughter with some of these. Yeah, probably not. Anyway, so once the order of bill waits, it goes into the Senate, and they don't have any time limit on debate. So as long as they want to keep on talking, they can. Remember, they have that filibuster thing, and the only way to stop a filibuster is basically 16 senators have to sign a document, but that's like trivial. The important thing is you need 60 votes to stop it, and it's hard to get 60 votes. So a lot of times they just, if a bill doesn't have 60 votes behind it, they don't even take it on in the Senate. All right, once it passes the Senate, if it does, um, if the bill hasn't changed much, if they haven't amended it, if they haven't changed it, it goes right to the White House and the president takes action. But if they've amended it, if there's been changes since it left the House, if they rewrote it in any way, then they call a conference committee. I put top hats on them just to make them look different from, I don't know, the guys that do research up here. They don't wear top hats. They're an ad hoc committee, which means like it's just a pickup. There's nobody. You're not assigned to the conference committee. It's a group of people from the House that probably were on the subcommittee, and a group of people from the Senate. They look at the bill and they try to reconcile differences. They look at it and see if it changed too much. If it changed too much, they might have to send it back to the Senate or back to the House. And if it's close enough, I mean, it wasn't a big change, then if they all agree, it goes on to the White House. So that's what the conference committee is. People get confused by the conference committee a lot, and you really shouldn't. It's just that the process can take, it can go through a lot, and a lot of changes can happen. So, right. So then I talked about Pennsylvania Avenue. That's an important avenue, and it's fun if you go to Washington D.C. Just to walk down it and see. And then you walk over towards the White House, go past the Treasury Department and all that stuff. You see Hamilton statue. It's cool. Anyway, there's Bill. And then we get to presidential action. And again, if you did that homework really well, a lot of people did a nice job on it and did a really good job with this. Because I think the question that I had was like, what's the 3 actions the president can take? And really 4, technically. And I put that because technically you can call me on it, but most people don't even know. They just think that he can either sign it or veto it. And there's that 3rd option, which is really kind of a 4th option. So it gets to the White House. A timer starts 10 days. And he has 10 days, not including Sundays. The reason why that's part of the rules, the founding fathers wanted that, was because the president could kill bills just by putting it off in the distance, not dealing with it. And then it would just like, that's not fair. It's too much power. So the expiration date kind of forces the president to take action. Has to do something. He has to say yes or no. He has to show his cards. It calls him out. Signing it, sometimes if it's really an important bill, like a stimulus bill during a pandemic, he has like a big formal thing, and he'll bring people into either the Rose Garden or into the West Wing and in the Oval Office, and he'll sign it. Sometimes they use a whole bunch of pens, and the reason why they do that is because they give them out as like gifts. So people I guarantee you, back in the 70s, when that bill for the buses stopping became a law, when the president signed the bill, the president signed, I think it was probably Ford. President signed it with a bunch of pens, and probably the guy who sponsored it in Congress got one of the pens, and probably the parents who had maybe lost kids or had kids injured in the bus got pens. So that tradition started like with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I think, using a lot of pens, and the most ever used was for the Civil Rights Act. I think it was like 75 pens. That was Lyndon Johnson. A lot of pens. Imagine trying to sign your name. So you'd have to go, one letter or one pen or whatever. I mean, it's kind of hard to do, but it's nice. And they all have the special pens to do it. A lot of them use really fancy pens and stuff that are worth money. And Donald Trump likes to sign his name. He always did when he was a businessman with the Sharpie. So he started using the Sharpie, and it didn't look like the cross pen that Obama used and stuff, and the fancy pens they use. And so Sharpie actually made a special. That's it right there. A special Sharpie just for him, and it's a little bit more fancy looking. It's a little more fancy than my Sharpies that I use. It's kind of cool. The signature is kind of bizarre looking. It looks like a heart thing, but I can't talk. My signature isn't anything special. But that's the story with this sign. If it's a big act, the veto doesn't mean it's killed. It doesn't mean that. The veto is there's actually a formal document that the president signs and explains why he doesn't like the bill. And then it goes back to Congress, and they have to get 2/3 to override the veto, which is really hard to get, especially nowadays. 2/3, you know, Democrats, Republicans don't agree on 2/3 of just about anything. So it's very hard to override vetoes, and very few bills have been overridden in history. But it doesn't mean kill. It just means the president actually has to explain why he is rejecting it, why he does, and it goes back to Congress, and they can override the veto. It can become a law. The pocket thing is it sits for 10 days, and if Congress is in session, it becomes a law. If Congress isn't in session, it is vetoed automatically. The question is, why would a president do that? And it might be that, like, if it's a pocket pass, it might be that the president kind of supports it, but it's not very popular in the country. So he doesn't want any kind of attention for it. So it just kind of happens. The same thing with pocket veto. It might be very, very popular in the country, and the president doesn't want to make a deal, but he doesn't really support it. So he just, lets it go to that expiration point. So that's when they use that. It's when they kind of want to go under the radar, and they don't want to attract attention. So that's it. That's bill to law. The long process. Most bills take almost a year to get to that point. And again, when it's an emergency, they move quicker, and that's the power of our legislative branch. So again, I'm going to do this walkthrough. Just be really quick with you right now, because this is going to be a question. This is a big part of the questions with this lesson, is to kind of explain this. So I'll go through it really quickly with you right now. The idea of free petition. Anybody can come up with an idea for a bill. That's number one. And most of the bills come from the executive branch. That's Article 2. That's what's next. And we'll explain a little bit better why that is. And then number 2, not a great drawing, I have to admit, but they're supposed to be. This is a subcommittee doing research. The Speaker of the House gives it a subcommittee. Goes to the committee. The committee gives it the subcommittee. These are the people that are specialists. They do all the research. They figure out if this bill is workable, if it's doable, and they hold hearings where they bring in. With a bill, I showed you oversight hearings where they were looking at government wrongs and stuff like that, or Facebook, a company doing wrong. But most of the hearings are over bills, and they're bringing in experts to testify if this is going to work, if it's not, and they hear from regular people. Like when they do an education bill, they try to bring teachers into Washington, D.C. and hear from teachers. What do you think this will do to your classroom if we do this? Stuff like that. That's a good thing. It's a great thing about our system, is that, mistakes that governments often make is because, nobody knows what someone's job is really like. And if you're changing their job without talking to them, it's kind of dumb, and it sounds complicated. All right. So then they go back to the full committee, which doesn't really exist here. And the subcommittee, if they want to, most bills die there. They get killed, a kill bill. But if they support it, they try to convince the rest of the committee, because once the committee agrees to it, they are the salesmen of it to the rest of the House of Representatives, 435 members. So then it goes to the Rules Committee. If they agree, they want to try to sell this in the House. And the Rules Committee is that small group, powerful committee that their two jobs basically are, when will it be heard and for how long? Which is very powerful, because if they don't like the bill, they can give it hardly any time and set it at the back of the calendar. If they really like the bill, they can bring it, for next week and give it a lot of time to really kind of try to sell it. So, and then it goes on to there's a dog barking. You probably can't hear it though, because the computer isn't that great. Then it goes. This is a full house. I have a clock. There's no desks. They have the speaker there with the mallet thing. It's not called a mallet. I can't think. There's people, debating. It's all time. It's very strict. They vote yes or no. If they vote yes, then it goes on to the Senate. The whole thing starts all over again. Goes to the vice president. Vice president signs it to the committee. Committee doesn't have to do the work of research and stuff in hearings if they don't want to, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they do, but usually they don't. And they look at the bill. They look at all the arguments. That they might look at the tapes of some of the hearings. They might go to the evidence, and they vote yes or no. They won't know. They table it. They can't kill it, but they can table it in the Senate. That's one of the courtesies of the Senate. And then it goes into the order of bills, the to-do list. It's not put on a calendar. It just waits for its turn to be heard. And a normal bill will sit there and wait for months before it's heard. And then it goes onto the Senate floor. You can tell the Senate because it has desks, and there's no time limit. And that's why the filibuster happens, because if you don't yield, you can keep on talking forever. And yeah. And there's people saying that they should do away with the filibuster completely and just make it a majority rules, which would, there's good arguments on both sides of that. The idea behind the filibuster was that you couldn't stop someone from telling the truth and getting it into the congressional record, like Mr. Smith goes to Washington, right? So in the full Senate, they're debating. And again, you try to work for a stick person sitting down at a desk. Not easy. Then they vote, and they have that roll call thing, which is kind of cool, I think. They don't have the scoreboard thing like in the House of Representatives. So they vote, and if they vote yes, it goes to conference committee if there's been changes. And the conference committee is made up of senators and House Representatives. It's temporary ad hoc committee. That's what ad hoc means. It means put together temporarily. That same group will probably never meet again. It's a weird combination. And they look at the bill, decide if it's the same. If it's not, they may have to send it back to the full House of Senate. Then it goes to the president. The president has 10 days to do something with it once it leaves the conference committee. And they can either sign it and it becomes the law, or they can veto it and it takes a 2/3 override to make it into a law. But usually by that time, it's too late. It's probably not going to become a law. All right. When I was teaching this a few years ago, I love Rick Steves, and I was watching Rick Steves. I find relaxation in watching Rick Steves, though I haven't really done it during the pandemic as much because it makes me kind of sad that I can't travel. But he was doing Berlin. Berlin was the capital of Prussia, and then when the German states united, it was where the First Reich of Germany started in Berlin. And he told the story about the building. That's their Capitol building in Germany today, in Berlin. And it was originally their Capitol building back right after World War I. And they rebuilt it after World War II because World War II, it got blasted to bits, and they had to rebuild it. And they put this dome on it. And if you look at the dome, I always thought, what an ugly dome. I hate this modern stuff. But then he explained why they put the dome. And I have to do this, though. I don't know where I'm going. 8:40. Right. Sorry. Not perfect.
Looking down.
Oh, hold on. Was it? I don't remember what I just said. 8:40. All right, let's start
with
here.
Its motto, to the German people, business and city, government
like a well-oiled machine.
Its effective government. The grandiose chancellor is the official residence of the prime minister.
So this is Berlin.
It faces Germany's parliament building, or Reichstag. With its motto, to the German people, it's the symbolic heart of German democracy.
So its motto, and now it covers up, is to the German people. I guess that's what it's. And Volk is people, because Volkswagen is people's wagon, and that's where Volkswagen gets his name. So again, this is an ugly dome. So he explains it.
The Reichstag has a short yet dramatic history. When inaugurated in the 1890s, the emperor dismissed the new parliament building as a house for chatting. But after World War I, the German Republic was proclaimed from right here. Then, in 1933, a mysterious fire gutted the building, giving Hitler a convenient opportunity to blame the communists for the blaze in order to consolidate his hold on power. As World War II drew to a close, the Nazis made their last stand here. Imagine Germans fighting Russians on its rooftop. After 1945, the bombed-out building stood like a ghost through the Cold War. Then, with reunification, the parliament moved back to Berlin. This historic ruin was rebuilt with a modern element, this striking glass dome. A walkway winds all the way to the top. A cone of mirrors reflects natural light into the legislative chamber far below. As you spiral up, survey the city. The views are marvelous. But for Germans, with their dark recent history, the view that matters most is inward, looking down, literally over the shoulders of their legislators. The architecture comes with a message. The people are determined to keep a wary eye on their government.
So that's it. That's what I didn't know until I saw that episode. And it basically is saying that the dome was made glass, which is kind of ugly on a beautiful old building, but it's beautiful because the Germans can go in on that dome and they can look down and watch the legislature. And it tells us that for democracy to work, we have to watch our government. As much as you may not be interested in politics or in history or in civics, part of being part of a democracy is keeping an eye on it and paying a little bit of attention to it, even if it's not your thing, because we have to hold them accountable, or else we can have horrible things happen, like what happened in Germany. Germany learned the lesson and has built a beautiful democracy out of it. This is the other side of the dome. This is what they look down into, and this is their legislative, their parliament. And you can see even the audiences can go into these like glass they're like glass, like I don't know what do you call them, but they can watch the parliament work. So that's what Reichstag means in German parliament. So that's the German government, and I just think that's a great way to end the legislative branch. The fact that we need to keep an eye on our government. And not let them do things, and keep them honest. And I know this gets fanned up by Fox News and CNN and MSNBC because they're all trying to make money, and they hype up these big conspiracy theories and stuff. But if you look and if you pay attention to people that you trust in politics, you can hold them accountable, and we need to, or else they do bad things. It can happen. Right, I think that's it for today. But I saw this and I thought of you guys, and I thought, and as far, if you're not, this is Dear Evan Hansen is a Broadway play. It's about a kid that goes to high school and he's socially awkward and he doesn't know how to make friends, and it gets worse because he starts thinking about it and he doesn't know how to like connect with anybody, and he does a horrible lie that ends up causing a massive amount of damage in high school. And that's the story of Dear Evan Hansen. And this song just reminded me of you guys and what we've been going through. There's no questions on this. So if you don't want to hear a song, you can end it here. But I just thought of you guys with this, and I hope you guys are staying safe. Have a fun education afternoon, and go get them. Don't hold back. These are people that read the play from all over the world.
Nobody was there.
Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere?
Have you ever felt like you could disappear?
Like you could fall, no one would hear. Well, let that lonely feeling wash away.
Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand,
you can reach out your hand.
and oh, someone will come running, and I know they'll take you home.
Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, you'll reach up and you'll rise again.
Lift your head and look around.
You will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
You will be found.
There's a place where we don't have to feel alone. Every time that you call out, you're a little less alone. If you only say the word,
From across the silence,
your voice is heard. Oh,
someone will come running
oh,
to take you home. Someone will come running to
take you home, take you home. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, when you're floating on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, the story shall fade and rise again. If you only look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. All is breaking and all is new. All is you. Feeling of the enemy, suddenly I see that all is new. All is you. You are not alone. 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 You are not alone.
even when the dark comes crashing through.
When you need someone to carry you, when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. If you only look around, you will be found. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
You will be found.
All right. Again, this is a bizarre thing that we're going through, and I just want you to know that you're not alone. There's a lot of people going through it too, and it's going to change things. And I think when you look back in your life, it's going to be before COVID-19 and after COVID-19, and I really believe that you'll come out of this with strength that no other generation has had, and and you're certainly not alone. There's not a day that I don't go by thinking about you guys. All right. Have a fun educational afternoon again. Go get them, don't hold back.